I never would have imagined that my life would take such a drastic turn. 4 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage with Paul. We were the envy of our friends and family, always smiling, affectionate, and understanding toward each other. We met in university and had been inseparable ever since. We got married young, full of illusions and dreams to achieve together. The first few years of marriage were wonderful. We bought our first house, traveled the world, and built a life together that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Paul was attentive, romantic, and made me feel like the luckiest woman on the planet. I adored him and couldn't imagine my life without him. But as is often the case, routine and responsibilities began to weigh on our relationship. Romantic gestures became increasingly rare, and conversations more superficial. Despite everything, we remained a solid couple in the eyes of everyone. We tried hard to maintain appearances, convinced that it was just a rough patch that we would soon overcome. That's when Lucas came into my life, my new colleague at work. At first, I didn't pay much attention to him. He was just a colleague I had to collaborate with on some projects. But gradually, his presence began to brighten my days at the office. Lucas was funny, intelligent, and had a way of looking at life that I found fascinating. Our lunchtime conversations became the most anticipated moment of my workday. He made me laugh like I hadn't in a long time, listened to me with genuine interest, and made me feel valued not only as a professional but also as a woman. I tried to ignore the butterflies I felt in my stomach every time I saw him. I kept telling myself over and over that it was just a friendship, that I was confusing things, but it was useless. Each passing day, I felt more and more attracted to Lucas and more distant from Paul. One evening, as I was dining in silence with Paul, as had become the habit, I found myself thinking about Lucas, his smile, the way his eyes sparkled when he talked about something he was passionate about. That's when I realized I was in trouble. I was falling in love with another man. The guilt was eating me up inside. How could I feel this way? Paul was my husband, the man I had promised to spend the rest of my life with. We had built so much together, we had plans and dreams. I couldn't throw it all away for a fleeting crush. I decided to distance myself from Lucas and limit our relationship to strictly professional interactions. But that was easier said than done. Every time I saw him at the office, my heart raced. Our eyes met, and I felt a connection I couldn't explain with words. One afternoon, as we were working late on an important project, the inevitable happened. We were alone in the office, tired but satisfied to have finished on time. Lucas looked at me intently and said, "I can't pretend I don't feel anything for you anymore." Without giving me time to react, he approached and kissed me. It was a passionate kiss, full of pent-up desires. For a moment, I let myself go, responding with the same intensity. But then the image of Paul flashed in my mind, and I abruptly pulled away. I ran out of the office, confused and scared by what had just happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. The kiss with Lucas replayed over and over in my head. The guilt was suffocating me, but at the same time, I couldn't deny what I had felt. It was like I had woken up from a long lethargy, like I felt alive again after a long time. The following days were torture. I avoided Lucas at the office, but every time we crossed paths, I felt unbearable tension. At home, Paul noticed that something was wrong, but I attributed it to work stress. I felt like a liar, a traitor. I decided I needed time to think, to clarify my feelings. I asked Paul to give me some space, inventing an existential crisis I needed to resolve on my own. He, always understanding, accepted without asking too many questions. I went to my parents' country house alone with my thoughts. Those days of solitude allowed me to reflect on my life, on my marriage with Paul, and on what I felt for Lucas. I realized that Paul and I had become more like companions than a passionate couple. Yes, we loved each other, but was it enough? On the other hand, what I felt for Lucas was intense and exciting. It made me feel young again, full of illusions. But was it true love or just the thrill of the forbidden, of novelty? After much reflection, I made a decision. I couldn't continue to deceive Paul or myself. I had to be honest, even if it meant jeopardizing everything we had built together. I returned home determined to talk to Paul. When I arrived, I found him sitting on the couch, looking worried. Before I could say anything, he spoke. "We need to talk," he said. My heart raced. Did he know something? Had he discovered the kiss with Lucas? With a trembling voice, I asked him what was going on. Paul took a deep breath and began to speak. He told me that during my absence, he had reflected on our relationship, that he had realized that we had drifted apart for a long time, that we were no longer the joyful and loving couple we once were. As I listened, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because I wouldn't have to bring up the subject myself, sadness because his words confirmed what I already knew: our marriage was in crisis. Paul continued to talk. He told me that he loved me, that he would always love me, but that he thought we both deserved to be happy, that maybe we needed time apart to rediscover ourselves as individuals and decide if we wanted to stay together or take different paths. His words took my breath away. It was as if he had read my thoughts. With tears in my eyes, I told him everything. I told him about my confused feelings, about how I had fallen in love with Lucas unintentionally, about the kiss we had shared. I expected Paul to get angry, to yell at me, to accuse me of betrayal. But to my surprise, he remained calm. He looked at me with sadness and said, "I already knew." It turns out Paul had noticed my change in behavior for a long time. He had seen how my eyes sparkled when I talked about Lucas, how I prepared more to go to work. He had even overheard a phone conversation in which I talked to my best friend about my confused feelings. Instead of confronting me, Paul had decided to give me space. He hoped I would confide in him, that we could overcome this crisis together. But seeing that I didn't, he understood that our marriage was more damaged than he had thought. That night, Paul and I talked for hours. We cried, laughed, remembered the good times, and analyzed where we had gone wrong. It was a painful but necessary conversation that allowed us to see each other honestly for the first time in a long time. We decided to give ourselves time apart. Paul temporarily moved in with his brother while I stayed at home. We agreed not to see other people during this period to focus on ourselves and what we really wanted. The first days without Paul were strange. I felt lost in this house we had shared for so many years. But gradually, I began to rediscover myself as an individual. I resumed old hobbies I had abandoned, went out more with my friends, and devoted time to myself. At work, I maintained a cordial but distant relationship with Lucas. I explained the situation to him, and he respected my decision not to get involved with anyone during my separation from Paul. Months passed, and gradually, I gained clarity. I realized that what I felt for Lucas, though intense, was more of a fleeting crush than true love. It was the excitement of novelty, of feeling desired and valued again. Paul and I saw each other occasionally to talk about our personal progress and the future of our relationship. Each meeting was less tense, more honest. We rediscovered aspects of each other that we had forgotten. We laughed about past anecdotes and shared our fears and hopes. It was during one of these conversations that Paul surprised me with an unexpected confession. He told me that he had also felt attracted to someone else in the past, a colleague with whom he had shared an important project. At first, I felt hurt and betrayed. How could he have hidden something like that from me? But then I understood that Paul had done the same thing I had, fighting against those feelings out of love for our marriage. This revelation, far from separating us further, brought us closer in an unexpected way. We realized that we had both made mistakes, that we had both fought to keep our love alive despite temptations and difficulties. After 6 months of separation, Paul and I decided to give ourselves another chance, but this time with our eyes wide open. We knew it wouldn't be easy, that we would have to work hard to rebuild trust and rekindle passion. We started anew, as if we were a new couple. We went on dates, courted each other, and rediscovered the pleasure of intimacy. But most importantly, we learned to really communicate, to express our feelings and needs without fearing the other's judgment. It wasn't an easy path. There were moments of doubt, fear, insecurity. Sometimes I wondered if it wouldn't have been easier to just separate and start over with other people. But every time I looked at Paul, I remembered why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. Over time, our relationship strengthened. We were no longer the perfect couple that everyone envied. We were something better. A real couple with ups and downs who had chosen to be together despite the difficulties. Lucas continued to be part of my professional life, but now as just a colleague. The attraction I had felt for him faded, replaced by a friendly affection. I realized that what had drawn me to him was more what he represented, emotion, novelty, than him as a person. Paul and I renewed our vows in an intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest loved ones. This time, our promises carried a different weight. They were not the idealized words of a young couple in love, but the mature commitments of two people who had weathered a storm together and emerged stronger. Today, several years after that crisis, I can say that our marriage is stronger than ever. It is not perfect, because nothing is, but it is real and honest. We have learned to value each other, to take nothing for granted, and to work on our relationship every day. Sometimes I think about how close I came to throwing away years of love and companionship for a fleeting crush. I feel grateful to have had the opportunity to reflect, grow as a person, and rediscover the love I felt for Paul. This experience taught me that true love is not just passion and butterflies in the stomach, it is companionship, trust, and choosing to be with that person every day, even when things get tough. Paul and I are not the perfect couple we once thought we were. We are something better, a real couple who faced their demons, made mistakes, but knew how to forgive and move forward. And that, to me, is worth more than any fairy tale. Now, when I see young couples idealizing love, I smile inwardly. I know that true love is forged in difficulties, in moments of doubt, in the ability to forgive and start over. Paul and I have learned not to compare ourselves to other couples, not to seek perfection but authenticity. We have learned to value the small moments, a shared cup of coffee in silence in the morning, an unexpected caress, a knowing look during a family gathering. Our story is not a fairy tale, it is a true love story with ups and downs, moments of doubt and moments of absolute certainty. And it is precisely for that reason that it is a beautiful story. If I could give advice to other couples going through a similar crisis, I would tell them not to be afraid to face their problems honestly, to give themselves a chance to rediscover themselves as individuals and as a couple, to take nothing for granted, and to work on their relationship every day. True love is not something that just happens, it is something that is built day by day with patience, commitment, and a lot of hard work. But when you achieve it, when you overcome the crises and come out stronger, there is nothing more beautiful in the world. Today, when I look at Paul, I no longer see the Prince Charming of my youthful dreams. I see a real man with his qualities and flaws who has been by my side through good times and bad. I see the companion I have chosen and who has chosen me, not just once, but every day of our life together. And when I think of Lucas, I no longer feel the heady emotion I once confused with love. I feel gratitude because, without knowing it, he was the catalyst we needed to face our marriage problems and rebuild it on stronger foundations. Life constantly tests us, presents us with temptations, and confronts us with our own fears and insecurities. But it is precisely these trials that allow us to grow, that show us what we are really made of. Our story did not end whether they lived happily ever after. Our story continues to be written every day, with each challenge we face together, with each laugh shared, with each argument we resolve with love and patience. We have learned to take nothing for granted. Every night before bed, we share something we are grateful for about the other. It can be as simple as thank you for taking out the trash or something deeper like thank you for listening to me today when I needed it. This little ritual helps us keep mutual appreciation alive and not forget the little things that make our relationship special. We have also learned to give each other space when needed. We no longer see time spent apart as a threat but as an opportunity to grow individually and have something new to bring to our relationship. Paul goes out with his friends, I have my yoga classes. We respect each other's personal spaces, and it makes us appreciate the time we spend together even more. We know we are not invincible and that our relationship will always require effort. But we are ready to make those efforts every day. We have gone through a difficult trial and emerged stronger, more united. We have learned never to underestimate the power of honesty, communication, and forgiveness. Paul and I decided to take a vacation together, a trip we had always wanted to make but had continually postponed. We chose to visit the beautiful beaches of Biarritz, a place we had both dreamed of seeing. During this trip, we took the time to reconnect, to talk about our hopes and dreams for the future, and simply to enjoy each other's company without the distractions of daily life. This trip marked a new beginning for us. We took the time to savor every moment, to rediscover the beauty of our relationship. We explored the beaches, tasted the delicious local cuisine, and watched the sunsets together, hand in hand. Every moment spent in Biarritz was a reminder of why we had chosen each other in the first place. When we returned from this trip, we decided to bring more spontaneity and new experiences into our daily lives. We started trying new activities together, like ballroom dancing and cooking classes. We went on nature hikes, attended cultural events, and even began planning little weekend getaways to escape the routine. Our relationship continued to flourish as we committed to never taking the other for granted. We learned to value each moment spent together and never lose sight of what had brought us together. Paul and I also incorporated moments of personal reflection and development into our lives. We attended personal development seminars, read books on psychology and relationships, and even practiced meditation together to strengthen our emotional and spiritual connection. Over time, we built an even stronger foundation for our marriage. We learned that crises and challenges can either break a relationship or strengthen it, depending on how they are approached. Our experience proved to us that true love requires work, patience, and a constant willingness to grow together. Today, when I look back, I am grateful for every moment, every challenge, and every lesson. It allowed us to forge an authentic and lasting relationship based on understanding, respect, and deep love. Paul and I are stronger than ever, ready to face whatever life throws at us together. And every sunset, whether in Biarritz or at home, reminds me how lucky I am to have him by my side. Not because he is perfect, but because we have chosen to love, support, and grow together every day.